So today's event, Creating Labor Trafficking Outreach Materials, will be the wrap up to our Increasing Identification Through Outreach series. We appreciate all of you for participating in previous events and accessing our resources via the website, and hope to engage you again in the future as you really digest all of the information and think about how to put it into practice within your own agencies. So without further ado, it's my sincere pleasure to introduce today's speaker, an expert in the field and consultant on our advisory panel, Bella Hounakey. Since 2011, Bella has served as an advocate, organizer, and speaker on anti-trafficking programs and policies. She previously served on the board of the Human Trafficking Coalition in Michigan, worked with survivors at a residential trauma recovery center, and is a member of the U.S. Advisory Council on Human Trafficking. Bella, we're so glad to have you here, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, partners at Framework. Thank all of you for joining today. I see that we have people from all over the country: Brooklyn, New York, Miami, Florida, Alabama, Phoenix, just to name a few. Again, my name is Bella Hounakey. I will be your survivor consultant today, and for today's webinar, we're going to be focused on understanding the evolution of labor trafficking outreach. We're going to see how to evaluate images, languages, and mediums for outreach campaigns, and then gain insight into how to engage survivor consultants in outreach development. And then also learn questions to consider in how that impacts your outreach. So we'll start with the labor trafficking outreach evolution. Then we'll transition over to lessons we've learned from the domestic violence field. And then we're going to tackle the reach part of outreach. So the reason, the engaging, the approach, catering, and the hold, right? And then at the end, we're going to really, evaluate the impact. So stay tuned. You don't want to blink because you might miss something. So stay tuned. So today's conversation is going to be guided by Project Trust material. So we'll use some of their best practice interventions that they've created. And this is going to guide our conversation in today's webinar. So those of you who have been in the field for a while, you might be aware, or you might know of Project Trust. Project Trust, for those of you who are not aware or haven't heard of it, is a national training and technical assistance program. They are funded through the Office of Victims of Crime. And they exist to support agencies to integrate, as they integrate trauma-informed practices and methods to increase outreach effectiveness and inclusivity. So most of our conversation is going to be guided by their findings today. And also, I extracted this quote from one of the toolkit they released. The goal of outreach should be connection. The goal of outreach should be connection, right? So for me, when I hear this quote, what do I think about? I want to ask all of you, what is your story? Why did you begin outreach work? So if you see on this presentation, you see a QR code. So if today's conversation is going to be very engaging. I know you're comfortable in your homes, but it's going to require participation from you. So I recommend and I implore you to take your phone and scan the code. And that's how we're going to be engaging throughout the conversation. So when I see this quote, the goal of survivor outreach should be connection. So I want to ask you, what's your story? Why did you begin anti-trafficking work? What fueled your interest? I see outreach as a way of empowering people to make informed choices that improve lives of survivors and victims who identify as victims of crime. And I see outreach as effort to improve our materials prior, during, and after exploitation. And when I read this quote, I'm reminded that outreach is only effective if it centers around survivors and victims' experience. If it recognizes their identity, their dignity, if it addresses their fear and dreams and hopes. So that's how I see outreach. So that again goes back to you. What started your passion for outreach? What started your passion for the work that you're doing? So use your phone, scan that QR code, and let us know what you think.
I think this code actually takes you to the toolkit, but if folks want to utilize the chat to share their insights, there's also going to be a chance a little bit later in the presentation to share your thoughts and your lessons learned on all of your outreach tactics.
Thank you, Megan.
Coming in the chat, yeah, connection is key.
Yes. Yes. So many of you might also be aware with Look Beneath the Surface. Look Beneath the Surface is a campaign that is through HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, and it was intended to raise awareness on human trafficking and also go over factors that make certain populations at more risk. So if you look at this flyer, again, I mentioned that this is going to be a very interactive webinar, and so I'm going to hold you up to that. The previous code took you to the toolkit, but this QR code should take you to if you scan it, use that and tell us what elements of this flyer can improve. Observing this flyer, this campaign material, looking at what was put out, and look at how it's being presented. What elements of this image and how it's presented, all the information that are on it, and what ways can they improve? What do you recognize when you look at this campaign material? What is the first thing you recognize? So use your phone, scan this, and please let me know what elements can be approved. I'll give you a few seconds to scan your code, and also I'll be reading your responses. So please do that. Let me know what elements of this can be approved. This particular image could be approved. Okay, I see trafficking only happens in the bedroom and it's only sex. I see women of color should be in this picture. I see imagery, victim language, race, the woman, white, female, only sex trafficking, stereotypes. So I share your thoughts. Presented the victim as fearful, fragile. The photo used, that's a good one. Sensationalize the victim. Presented as fearful, fragile. Imagery, yes. So keep these in mind. The elements of this flyer that you say can be approved, keep all of this in mind. And we're going to be talking about this particular image, and we're going to keep referencing to it. So keep this image in mind. So Look Beneath the Surface campaign, as I mentioned, we're going to use a few of their images and seeing where they started from, where they are, and see what we've learned from them as a community, as those in the anti-trafficking community, anti-trafficking work. We're going to see what lessons we've learned from them and what we can take from what we've learned from them to impact and influence our work. Some of you might be aware of RTA. It started from the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority community. And if you've ever been to New York, California, all those big cities, and you've taken transit from those cities over the years, you will see that there are sometimes place cards on transportation. to create awareness. So RTA was the first in the country to start producing campaign materials to, again, create awareness on human trafficking, not just on labor trafficking, but all forms of trafficking, especially sex and labor trafficking. They are campaign material intended to create identification or increase identification for survivors to self-identify, and also include some materials or some campaign material to communicate to survivors that support is available after they've been identified. They've also placed a safe sign on all transit. So as a survivor, I've seen this myself in big cities, but I never connected the dot on who they are. So looking at the images that you saw earlier with the woman and then the room, and we talked about the elements that were helpful or not helpful. Some of the lessons we've learned from their beginning, the work that they started with, is, some of you have mentioned this, disempowering language, imagery. We see that if you look at the campaign material, it's a woman in the room, and I think in the background there's a man standing over, and so we see that how problematic that can be in this work of trying to make sure that we identify the forms of trafficking, the types of trafficking, the identification, the demographics of people who are trafficked. So we've learned lessons about not just presentation, but also language. We've learned lessons about imagery, and also representation, right? So from that, where do you go from there? How do we go from this is what we've learned to what do we still need to improve? And I think they've improved over time. But if we were to assess ourselves, evaluate ourselves, we must ask, what mechanism are we using to help survivors self-identify? How do we define human trafficking? How does our materials reflect what we are attending to? How does it define what human trafficking is for survivors that are actually being trafficked? So, as with anything in the anti-trafficking field, we aim to improve, right? We're hungry to improve, we aim to improve, and that's what it's all about. This is another campaign material that was released to this campaign, Look Beneath the Surface, through HHS. So again, use your phone and scan the QR code to participate. And then on the other side of it is the link to resources that you can see what HHS has released to influence in a positive way to this campaign. So use your phone again to scan and see, comparing what we first saw at the beginning of the presentation with the woman in the red dress. So that was early on in their campaign material what they used to create. Now with what they've known and learned from survivor consultants, from studies, they've improved, right? We still have a long way to go. So use your phones to see. This is the other campaign material they released. So from this, what do you think improved? What are some rooms of improvement, even with the information they already have? So what component of this is helpful and what component of this is not helpful? So I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Use your phone, and if you want to tap into some of the
Bella, I think you've lost your sound there.
Representation.
Go back.
Diversity, representation, less text, much easier to read, simple, rewarding, normalization, inclusive, diversity in pictures, different faces, absolutely, sex and labor, shows that anyone can be a victim, One thing that sticks out to me most is that there's diversity in the type of trafficking being represented. So from this image, what do you think are the different types of trafficking that are being represented? Looking at this flyer, what would you say are the different? Use the same interaction to let me know what type of human trafficking you believe are being represented here. Labor and sex trafficking, okay. Labor and sex. And smuggling, okay. Hospitality sector. Yes. So while we've seen an increase in effort to improve materials relating to human trafficking, we still have feedback, right? We see that one thing that sticks out to me with this post is that it says get help, right? If we go back to the first slide that I tell you, there was a lot of wording. It was a bit convoluted. So for a survivor or victim that is in need of support or in need of attempting to self-identify, they might not necessarily see a sign that they get help, but I see that there is certain things on this campaign material that appeals to me as a person that was once a traffic victim. I see get help. There under that I see free. So that's telling me that there's help available and that the help is free. The help is free. I also see that there's the test option. There is but then there are also other ways, right? I think this campaign material, one of the ways that I see that could be improved is that it has a taste of one one shoe fit all sizes method. So this campaign material is intended for all victims, right? So if you were to be the distributors of this campaign material, somebody who's a survivor of trafficking, if I were to look at this when I was being trafficked, I don't know if I would necessarily see this and say, this is speaking to me. There's so many things that are being represented here. There is for those of you who are in the anti-trafficking community, you see this image and you know exactly what is being communicated because you spent maybe your whole entire career doing this. So you can see this and say, okay, you know what? I know what look beneath the surface is. I know what the National Human Trafficking Hotline is. This is what I think it is. But we will talk about this later, but then when we see that trafficking victims who are being exploited during exploitation or prior to exploitation, where are we at the advocacy, the prevention, protection, prosecution side of things, the advocacy? Where is this image located? I don't know where to place this image, right? So there are good things about this campaign material. I know that there is Get Help, which signals that there's help available, that is free of charge. Nothing is required of me in order to get this help. But I'm also asking, do I know what is this saying? There's a woman and it looks like she has a towel in her hand. There's another, so I don't know if a trafficking survivor will look at this image and will say, this is speaking to me. This is intended for me. So this will lead us to our next point, which is that we have to improve. We have to get better, right? We have to get better. We're making progress, but there is a need to get better. The more we know, the more we improve our outreach. Now, those of you who have been in the anti-trafficking world for a while, whether it's micro level with policies or federal level, you know that we don't have an exact data or a way to evaluate if the materials that we have been advocating for, we have been putting together for the last 15 years, we have no way of measuring if our advocacy is actually reflecting what we are intending to reflect. Do we know that can you, those of you in your respective organizations or states, do you have ways to measure if your outreach material is actually reaching? Is it effective? Do we have ways to measure that? So with that, we know that we might not have ways to measure what advocacy, if there has been any data to measure the effectiveness of the outreach materials that have been released by various, there's anti-trafficking work is everywhere. There's always outreach materials, but there's no way to pull together all that information to measure and evaluate the effectiveness. But then there are other areas that we know that have worked to measure their efficiency and effectiveness. So one of those ways is through the domestic violence outreach findings. There's been a lot of studies, and I'm going to, at the end of this presentation, there are references to where you can read on those findings. But the domestic violence outreach findings might not be particularly related to human trafficking work, but there are things that we've learned from that field that we can apply to the outreach findings for human trafficking. For instance, some of their findings include that information for that domestic violence outreach has to be succinct and correct. We can apply that to labor and sex trafficking or other forms of trafficking. It says that some of their findings include campaign goal and audience must be clearly defined. And I think, we've been doing this. Graphic and shot-focused campaigns may increase rates of community member awareness, but decrease rates of survivor self-identification. That speaks on, you might look at an image and you might know exactly what it's communicating, but your brain can actually either shoot the information out of your head and just close the door for it, or be receptive to it. So they're saying that those graphic and shot-focused campaigns may increase rates of community awareness. So those campaigns might work to increase awareness, but it might decrease the rate of self-identification. Survivors don't often see themselves as victims of abuse. When I was being trafficked, I didn't even know what human trafficking was, right? I only learned that after the fact. So if I don't know what that means, and I'm looking at, graphic and shot-focused images, I don't compare myself to them. Perhaps maybe I don't look like that on the external, but internally I might look like that. So revisiting and reimagining the graphic and shot-focused campaign is beneficial, not just for us as communities who are increasing trafficking, who are making efforts to bring awareness, but also for victims to self-identify. Campaigns that validify and condemn perpetrators decrease self-identification and increase control tactics. Community attitude and beliefs impact action. Again, goes back to the type of community that you're advocating in. What are their perception of what human trafficking is, or lack thereof? Do they think that it just doesn't exist in their community? That's going to reflect what they believe your materials are trying to do. And to create change, you must aim to connect with survivors as your audience. I'm a survivor of human trafficking. I'm speaking to you today, not just a survivor, but also as an expert. So making sure that you connect, you work with survivors, engage with survivors to influence your outreach, because only survivors know what spoke to them when they were being trafficked. Really quickly, what are some of your lessons learned on outreach best practices? So feel free to include it in the chat on what your lessons have been on outreach best practices. So from Project Trust, I like to recognize this as a hierarchy of outreach. The reach being, identify your purpose and goal. What is your purpose and goal? Engaging, how is your outreach material, ensuring that your materials pull viewers. Again, not just those in the inside, we can't have an echo chamber where we're only just talking to each other about human trafficking, but how can we push our voice out? Appeal, what is the wants and needs of your audience? What do they want? What do they need? Cater to your method of delivery to your audience. We're going to talk about this down the line, and also hold. Exactly. I see the survivor knows others. The survivor use Facebook photos in order to see themselves in the picture. Don't overwhelm people. All the services your agency can offer. Ask lay people to like. These are great recommendations. Again, with the goals of outreach, what is your goal of outreach? Is it to increase? Is it to generate funding? Is it to reach out to survivors? Within the spectrum of outreach, what is your goal, right? What is your overarching goal? What is your sub goal? I think those are important. What are you trying to reach? What do you want your audience to do? At the end of your outreach, what do you want your audience to do? If you were to go to a small town in Michigan, you want that town to know what human trafficking is. You want survivors to come forward. You want survivors who are now free in their community to come forward. Identify those goals, identify those subcategories, and that's going to really influence what you say. That's going to influence what you don't say. That's going to influence the images you have. That's going to influence who you sent to distribute those outreach. So identify your goal, identify who you're trying to reach, and really understand your audience. Thank you. Next slide.
There may just be a delay in advancing the slide. If you want to keep going, Bella, about, oh, there we go, about reach.
Yes. So I talk about the importance of the purpose, identifying the purpose of your outreach. When you put out materials, think about the method of delivery. Avoid certain myths about labor trafficking or human trafficking in general. I have seen a lot of those in the anti-trafficking work repeat the same story over the years. And if we've been doing the same thing and we don't know if it's working, at some point we have to change our delivery, right? We have to change how we do it. So I think having a conversation on your goals, your sub goals, paying attention to the language, paying attention to the certain cultural considerations are all going to really influence if your message is well received in certain communities, if it's effective or not. So these are things to keep in mind. So we're going to move on to the engage side of outreach. I spoke earlier on avoiding, there are certain language that are intended for certain population you want to reach. So ask yourself, is my material intended for the population I'm trying to reach? Is it user-friendly? Going back to the beneath the surface campaign material, we thought that the way it was outlined, if that flyer, that campaign material was to reach a certain community, can that community, is it user-friendly for that community? Can viewers ask for help only via one format, assuming that they can test or make calls? So we are in a very technology field and community and culture. So think about ways that you can incorporate that to your benefit into your outreach material. you also want to use, we talk about the importance of language and images. Is your image empowering survivors? And do I look at an image and see a sad, fragile girl, or a sad, fragile guy, man, or a youth, or something? So is your material empowering enough? You want to pay attention to language that are encouraging. You know, if you see this, it says be alert, be strong, be free. When I hear that, as somebody who was being trafficked, okay, I'm alert now. I'm strong, and I can be free. And these images are telling me that they're empowering me, and they're reflecting what they see me as, right? We have to start seeing survivors how we see them. If one way we want to rescue, but we're not communicating that. People who are being trafficked, they're not going to really believe that you all in the anti-trafficking movement see them as strong. They're not going to say that you see them as the ability to be free. They're not going to see that you see them as having skills to be alert. So your materials have to communicate what you already believe about them. If you believe they are weak, if you believe they're whatever language you use is going to reflect on your material, which is going to reflect what the victims see themselves as. In addition, so use empowering languages, and that leads us to where do we want to go from there? What language should you consider, and how can you incorporate that to your material? So instead of putting material out that says victim, criminal, slave, child prostitute, go from that to, before I was a victim of human trafficking, I was a girl. I was a girl that liked pink. I was a person. So to men, women, people, youth, he, she, they, survivor, those were lived experiences, because that doesn't just define a person, right? Exploitation doesn't define a person. Nobody should just be reduced to their exploitation, right? Instead of communicating that victims are lured, trapped, tricked, that is languages that perpetrators use. That is manipulation tactics that they use. So we don't want to contribute to that. We don't want to fuel that. We don't want to empower them by using the language that they use. We want to disempower traffickers and empower survivors, and understand that traffickers use exploitation. You saying that they are lured, trapped, tricked, it gives traffickers more. It's like a bonus point. It tells them that they have some kind of skills, right? We have to understand that traffickers use manipulation, entrapment, threat, coercion, control, exploitation to exploit individuals. So we need to move from victims are rescued, right, to victims escape. It goes back to empowering. I had the ability to escape. I had the ability to leave. I had the ability to exit. So communicating that, this goes back to empowerment again, because victims are rescued. That put us in a God position, a savior position, and so we want to be able to empower survivors to know that, you know what, you can escape and you can leave and you can make an exit. They are not in control here. We can help you be in control. We are here to support you be in control. We're not rescuing. We're not gods, right? So that is going to transition to the appeal. So if I'm a survivor and I want to escape, I want to leave, and I want to exit, but where to? Where am I going to go to? So that leads us to the appeal. Appeal session of outreach. So you want to really appeal to survivor needs. If they feel like, okay, I want to exit, I want to leave, I want to escape, but I'm worried, I can't do that. I don't know where housing is. I don't know if I can get employment or financial assistance. I don't know what to do. I don't know what. So I like this flyer, because it asks the question: Are you unable or worried to leave your job? It's talking directly to a survivor. And this particular, you can see that it's intended. This material was intended for, to see it, is intended for migrant workers. and it talks about being able to leave. Has anyone ever threatened you or your coworkers? Are you feeling tired or overwhelmed? And what I like about this is that it say connect with us for housing. It didn't just stop there. It offers something. It say connect with us for housing, employment, financial assistance. So it immediately it's meeting their immediate needs, and whatever that may be. It could be, it could be water, it could be change of clothing, it could be safety planning. And I think sometimes safety planning takes precedence over everything else because it goes back to being able to save in order to be able to think about what your immediate needs are. So I think safety planning, all of these things communicate that we have the resources to provide A and Z to you. And we're going to move toward the cater aspect of it. Use imagery, use representative imagery, display relatable scenarios. Do not display shock experiences that may create a victimization threshold. Again, if you are those of you who are more interested in knowing what works, I advise you to go to Framework's website. They have a lot. I'm not just saying this because I'm a consultant with Framework, but I truly believe in the work that they're doing. They have a lot. They dedicated a lot of time and effort to creating these imagery and these cartoon videos that really. And I've sent these to some of my Survivor Network friends so that they can distribute to their communities. Because it really shows you how to reach certain communities, not just how to do it, how you can use it to influence, to improve. So for those of you who are wondering, oh, you know what, we have a lot of ideas, we don't know where to start. Good thing you call in today. Good thing you're doing this webinar today because you are able to. If you go to Framework's website, they have all sorts of materials and resources to really help guide you. And so that you can use that as a frame of reference to produce your materials. And then we're going to transition into the cater part of the outreach. Materials should be seen and understood. Use survivor community representation and the creation of your materials. Avoid racist portrayals of traffickers. I think this is a big one. We have to be careful to not communicate something or create a stereotype of a trafficker. There is no one image of what a survivor looks like. There is not one image of what a perpetrator looks like. So we have to be careful to not use racist portrayals of traffickers. Do not distribute identifiable images of survivors without representation and consideration. There has been a lot of survivors that they love to be a part of outreach, but they want to protect their identity. They don't want to just be redeemed. Unless it's self-identified, make sure you get the permission and be considerate. Do not forget that there are multiple types of human trafficking. Again, going back to the very first flyer we saw, the red room, red dress, it shows that it's just sex trafficking. There are so many forms of trafficking, and representation matters, and it's so important. It influences our work because representation, it plants seeds that grow what we expect. If we're only communicating that it's only sex trafficking that's priority over all forms of trafficking, that's what our advocacy is going to reflect. That's the only type of victim that we're going to, or survivors, or lived life experience individuals that we're going to attract. So we want to make sure that we are really highlighting multiple types of trafficking. Do not forget to use census data to mirror regional diversity. That's really important. I think I would say that, we always don't have the exact data, but there are data out there that you can use to create your material. And with that, a part of cater, I would say that there are medium considerations to use. Before you spend thousands of dollars on billboard, thousands of dollars on the big billboard that say human trafficking, call this number. Again, ask yourself, who's your audience? If somebody's driving by and they saw that poster or that campaign material, what then? How is that going to be used? So think about these things. Think about if a survivor is being transported to our communities, are they going to be visibly seeing that image, right? Who is that image for? Is it for ourselves? Are we putting campaign materials for ourselves to say, yeah, we did it? It shouldn't be the intention and the goal, right? So you really want to ask you want to ask yourself certain questions. Does the medium represent the forms of trafficking? Is it the location that you are putting the campaign in? Does it have an increased number of people who are trafficked? Is it frequently? Is it frequent? There's some communities that are very transient. So consider your location, consider your medium. Can the victim understand what's being communicated by the flyer billboard? Because we want to increase not just awareness but self-identification. If more survivors can come up and say, I'm being trafficked, I saw this, I can do this about it, then we know that it's effective. We know that we're not only getting survivors by what we put out, but we're also seeing increase of people who are self-identifying. Discrete items and word of mouth. If a survivor self-identify, and whatever medium that was used to encourage them to self-identify, this is something that survivors have a lot of community. They know how to navigate their community. So that's something that is also effective. Image-based outreach without having to promote that shop campaign. And one of the things that I'm fond of is the radio commercials. I know when I was being trafficked, I was in the car all the time, and I used to hear these ads in the car all the time about trafficking, and I keep hearing it. Like, if you're being this, if you're being that, if you're being this. And I used to hear it so much that it became a song. So I'm a huge fan of that. Not to say that's not only effective. One thing that I'm particularly, if you see this, I don't know. Yeah. So if these are there is a. I don't know if you can zoom out. Maybe not. So there is. If you see this presentation in front of you, there is a chapstick, a pen. There's a chapstick and a pen, and it was through a campaign material MOSAIC, and they are a community outreach or a local outreach program, and they used to distribute these there is a pen, there is a chapstick, and they used to distribute it to that community. So if you peel it, it has certain questions like, are you this? Do you have this? Just like the one with the migrant workers, to help survivors self-identify. I think that's really cool because it's so discreet that if you look at it, you might think it's just a chapstick. This is not a chapstick. But then what they did is they embedded some things in here so that when the survivor peel it, even if they are in a very undisclosed location by themselves, at some point they are going to discover that, okay, these are the questions that are being asked with images. And so this can help me self-identify. So those are examples of things that we can do to be creative. Again, before we spend thousands of dollars on big campaign materials, really utilize some of these recommendations. Talk to your partner organizations to see what's worked. And again, visit framework to really see, okay, what's worked for other people, what can work for me. This again, to pull it all together, if I look at this, to me it's informative. It has time frames, right? 5 a.m., 9 a.m., 3 p.m. And so even if I don't speak English, I know the time, and I see that it say, Eres Tú. Are you wake up at 5, work, is somebody, so it's relatable, it's informative, it's an accessible outreach. And so when we want to put it all together, these forms of outreach that are effective, that are relatable, and that really reach out to just the survivor who is our intended audience. So thinking about our audience, if I look at this, I would say, you know what? This is asking, am I person who wakes up at 5, 9:30, 3, 11 p.m. And I see that it's the same person with the yellow or orange hair cap. And so this material, I say Eres Tú. I know that it's intended for a Spanish-speaking community, right? So this is a type of imagery that we want to release and should be encouraged to follow. Again, this is a continue, so that's just the part, and it goes into other questions. It talks about, you know, are you recently migrated? You know, you live somewhere that is not, you don't have access to other people. It's targeting a specific population, and they, you know, no te pagan por tu trabajo. They're not paying you for your work. So all these things is communicating something, and it's simple, right? It's a question mark, something that's easy to read, user friendly. So this is the type of material that we want to put out, and it might be addressing labor trafficking. So this is an example of a good campaign material because it's representative. Again, the whole side of outreach. You know, you want to start to make sure everything is in place to be successful. Go use resources like Project Trust Toolkit. As organizations, as people, as individuals, as community leaders, use the resources that are available to you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. You don't have to start over. Let's build on what we have. Maintain a reliable staff. Ensure highline call and messages are not missed. Ensure agency offers physical and language access. Collaborate with regional housing, substance abuse, medical services, etc. These are the things that we know, right? Again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And this all goes back to what fuels your work, what drives you. Outreach is about what? Reaching is about connection. It goes back to connection. So maintaining a reliable staff, ensuring highline calls and messages are not being missed. This is all part of outreach. It's one, staying together and reaching out together, and so that we can reach in. We reach out so we can reach in. So make sure everything is in place to be successful. Again, I would just say that, you know, to conclude, you know, to be survivor-centered, you have to prioritize not just survivor needs, but also engage them. All these people that we're trying to reach, they have a voice, they have expertise. So include survivor in the inception of everything you do, from your project, from your outreach material. There is a survivor in your community. If not, you can reach out to Framework. They have a lot of experts, myself included, and then they can help you connect with survivors who are expert in a particular. Is it developing a flyer? Is it structuring questions? They can help you connect you with an expert in your field on what you want to do. Competition along with that comes competition. Consider survivors' background knowledge and skills when you are working with them. Some of the potential questions you can ask is, you know, who and where should I be targeting? What languages and culture expectations should I be considering? What industry considerations should we make? How should we collaborate? Who's already connected to this population? I think it's so important. Who's already connected? It's not about our own reputation. You know, it's already, instead of Bella's community going there, I'm going to see if Framework if I could collaborate with Framework to communicate and reach out to the community I'm trying to reach. You know, evaluate your campaign. Remember, you know, the planning question. Again, if you're using things, I think from here on out, if you already don't do this, start to measure your effort. Without measuring, we don't know if it's working. We just be working with no inclination of output. So we have to see if our input is measuring to our output. So again, I think this presentation is going to be shared, but use these to evaluate What did you learn? Who knows about the campaign? Who took action? Who shared the information? Where did the people learn the information? How long they received? And who did the people listen to? Not just when you come in, don't stop in there and then go. Come back to see if it was effective. Again, and this speaks further to what barriers that you know, what barriers you can measure, and also I think the biggest piece here is not who you're reaching, but who are you not reaching. If we're only reaching the same people all the time, then we need to reevaluate. So who are you not reaching? This is what measuring is so important. You know, evaluating, and also the second part, you know, you never just see evaluation, you always see measuring and evaluation. So who are you not reaching? What percentage of people are you not reaching? And if you're reaching them, what are you seeing that is missing, right? These are the sources for you to follow. Project Trust, Human Trafficking Outreach is here, and the rest that we referenced throughout the time today is also there. And I mentioned this earlier. I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to speed things up quickly. But again, you have frameworks, information. If you have any questions, reach back out. But again, use your phone to sign up and connect with our outreach experts. Again, myself included. I think I did good today, so you might want to speak to me today again. But there are other survivor leaders, experts, and so framework can guide you. So use your phone to scan this, to connect to an outreach expert, and you get like a free one-on-one feedback on your material or campaign. I see a lot of you joined today, so we're going to be inundated with so much, so it might take a while to get back within 24 to 48 hours, but you hear back from framework and they'll connect you with an expert. If you have any questions, I know we ran out of time, but if you see on the screen, again, there's a QR code and it takes you to a brief survey, and you can tell us what you loved, what I could have done to improve, what framework can do to improve. And so we're going to be reading every feedback and really use what you shared with us as ways to make improvement. We are a community. Our goal is outreaching by coming together in order to reach out to pull in. So your feedback really help us improve the ways that we reach out to you and the ways that we modify or improve or subtract or add. This is a long journey. Advocacy, outreach is a long journey. You just need people who are able to work that journey with you. And so we are thankful that you are able to join in today to learn, or even to give us feedback. What are you working on that we can work on, or that can allow us to improve what we do? So connect with framework and learn to. You can learn about labor trafficking. You can learn about, you can request a training or consultation. Those are different ways that you can reach out to framework. Not to be biased, but I've been with framework for about a year now, and I absolutely, as a survivor leader, I respect their work. I'm proud of their work. I think that they are exceptional. Not that you all are not, but I think they're very exceptional. They give you skills that influence your work. So thank you again. I'm sorry we were not able to get to the questions today, but if you have any questions, again, go back to the QR code and let us know what you think, and we'll reach back out to you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Megan to close.
Yes, Bella, thank you so much for, you certainly did do a great job. I'm seeing a lot of the comments in the chat, thanking you for all of your insights and walking us through the multiple dimensions and considerations of putting together labor trafficking outreach materials. There's a lot to consider. Folks have asked a lot of really good questions in the Q&A. You can continue to put those in. We'll leave the webinar open for folks to contribute those, and we're going to follow up with responses to each and every question. We do have 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to toss you a couple and see what we can get to here, Bella. One of them was pretty straightforward. If you can give some examples of what a shock experience was, you cautioned people to avoid highlighting shock experiences in their materials.
Yes, I would say the images that have the survivor or presents the individual who's being trafficked as brutalized, as violated, because oftentimes that might not be a representation of all survivors of trafficking. It communicates that human trafficking is violent, and sometimes it's not all violent. So the images that, maybe there's bruises on their faces, they're extremely frail and skinny, and or they're of a particular race. So, those images that, sometimes we see in maybe like, the movies where they present a typical survivor of crime. We want to not, I think, in sense, those are very disempowering. So we want to communicate again that survivors are people who were exploited, and that's not their identity.
Perfect. Well, we snuck in one question. Like I said, we're going to get to all of them in our follow-up. On the screen, you see the link to sign up for an individualized conversation with Bella and with other experts on this topic. We know there's a lot going through your minds right now. Perhaps there's been a lot of things that you've been chewing on for a while. And so really, we encourage you to connect with us and the folks that we work with who know so much about this topic, to pick their brains and get some insight into the stuff that you're creating at your own agencies. So with that, I want to thank Bella so much again for presenting here today. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.